Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. This is Mahadev the Thunder Wizard. Today I want to talk to you about what I believe is happening and what I can comprehend is happening when extraterrestrials from higher dimensions communicate with those of us in the third dimension. And my experience, which I've shared in my books as well as many of my videos on the channel, if we are to believe what I say is actually true, then it turns out that my experiences are proving the reality of quantum physics theories. And that's also incredibly important to understand why personal experience of extraterrestrials is necessary for humans to believe in the reality of higher dimensions and the nature of who they are. Without this experience, it's just merely a theory, and your three-dimensional brain will reject it, as many scientists are doing. This is the reason why the majority of scientists are baffled when it comes to the conversations surrounding the congressional UFO hearings. Hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that if I don't get caught up in too many, I go off on tangents. So before we go any further, people come to the channel, and YouTube is YouTube, and unfortunately YouTube is filled with looky-loos who just show up and, come and go. And the thing is, people leave comments that it's so frustrating because they put zero effort into looking into the channel. So first off, let me tell you that I have books. I have not just a few books. I think I've got something like 20 or 30 books about all kinds of stuff that will explain many of the things that you might not understand about all kinds of stuff that we talk about here. So what I'd like for you to do is to go, you see the name right here, Michael William Denny. You see that as I'm pointing at the cover of my book? Just add a .com to that and go to that website, and you'll see a bunch of books, including Interdimensional Revolution and Extraterrestrials Are Coming to Earth. If you want to hear me go into detail explaining why I know what I know, because that was one of the latest comments. Where is this guy getting this stuff? And it's frustrating because in a comment I can't respond, but it's obvious this person has done zero effort into even trying to understand where I get my stuff. So michaelwilliamdenny.com if you really want to understand what I'm saying. But if you want to go a step further than that, if you want to experience it yourself, this has to be experienced to be understood. Now, you may have experiences and then not know what to do with them. This happens a lot. And then my explanations will be helpful. I put 2 links in here to an old video from the 1970s. Of course, back then they didn't really have video, they had film, but it's from the 1970s, and it's Carl Sagan. This is an astrophysicist from way back when I was a kid. And he talks about the fourth dimension. And he talks about what it would be like even if you, as a third dimensional being, were to try and communicate with a two-dimensional being. And I saw this after I had had my first extraterrestrial encounter. So again, if you're not caught up with what's going on here, go onto my channel. Go to the channel page. Do you know how to do that? Go onto the channel page, the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel page. Click on the playlists, or click on the little magnifying glass and type in "When I Became an Extraterrestrial." That is a video where I give video evidence of my encounters with extraterrestrials. You can see video evidence and some stuff of what happened my first time and how it completely scared the crap out of me. Not because anything bad happened, just because I didn't understand it. It was frightening to me because I didn't understand it. And this is the basic of what I want to say here. The reason why scientists don't seem to understand what to do with these congressional hearings is because, thinking about extraterrestrials from your assumption and your experience of the third dimension is going to get you nowhere. You're going to end up having the same experience that science always comes to in the third dimension because it can't do anything other than look at itself, which is the third dimension. When you look at the third dimension, extraterrestrials can't exist, life after death can't exist, even higher dimensions can't exist. We only know of higher dimensions from quantum physics, which is done through mathematical calculations, which is trying to point at something you can't have any experience with. And I thought about making this video today because, I'm interested in the discussion that's going on in the narrative about UFOs and the UFO disclosure, quote unquote, movement going on with these congressional hearings. And on News Nation, I think on the last video I called it One News or something like that. I think it's called News Nation. I'm so bad. I don't pay attention to names. I'm like that typical old guy that can't remember people's names and stuff. Anyway, News Nation, they had Avi Loeb as their science expert. And he was commenting on David Grush trying to explain what it might be like for higher dimensional extraterrestrial beings to interact with us in the third dimension. And he, at least to his credit in that moment, said, listen, I'm not an expert on this. This is how I understand it. And so Avi Loeb, this expert physicist, I guess, scientist, who the heck knows what his qualifications are, he went in and started saying how irrelevant that was because higher dimensions can't be proven. And because they can't be proven, then we can't be talking about them in terms of ETs and all that kind of stuff. And it made me think, of course. And it reminded me of what it was like. Again, going back, if you watch that video, please don't be lazy, put some effort and find it on my channel. The video called How I Became an Extraterrestrial. When you see that video, you are going to hear audio of me incredibly frightened. You're going to hear me. I mean, it was there's been the two most frightening experiences of my life. Not when I'm surfing, 20-foot waves and being held under and thinking I'm going to drown. Not when I think I'm going to get attacked by a grizzly bear. Not that that's happened, but not when I think I'm about to get into a car accident. The two most frightening experiences I've ever had were my first experience with interdimensional beings. One was with a Sasquatch. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was doing CE5. I meditated before going up into the mountains to go backpacking for a couple of weeks, and I knew I was going into an area that had reports of Bigfoot sightings and experiences. So I meditated and I sent out the message, hey, any Sasquatch out there, I want to see you, I want to meet you. Didn't really think much of it. I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. And as it turns out, the night before 9/11, right at twilight, I had an experience, and I have a video about that as well. I won't get into it, but it became very clear I was dealing with an interdimensional being. I didn't even know what the heck those things were. This was, 9/11. This was a long time ago. I was 30 years old, I think. I didn't know what the heck was going on. And but I was frightened out of my gourd because I felt that if I continued to have contact with this being, that it would kill me. I would disappear. I understand now that's because his higher dimensional frequency was actually beginning to open up a dimensional portal, and I would have had to stop existing in the third dimension, which feels like death. If all you know is the third dimension and it starts going away, it feels like you're going to die. A lot of people like me with these solar storms. By the way, there's another one on the way that's going to get here in a few days. These solar storms that are hitting, a lot of the feelings that people are having, among others, is they feel like they're going to disappear. And that feeling that you're going to disappear is an accurate feeling. You're going to disappear from the third dimension and awaken in another dimension. That's what I understand is the process here. So we have to understand that this isn't something that's going to be solved with three-dimensional science. Three-dimensional physicists, to their credit, they only look at what can be proved in the third dimension. And so if they can't prove it, physically prove it in the third dimension, then they don't believe in it. I understand that. I respect it. I've lived my whole life that way. Anything I talk about because I've experienced it. If I haven't experienced it, I'll frame it in such a way where you'll know that I haven't experienced it. I'm theorizing. But I've experienced communication from beings from higher dimensions, more times than I can count over the past year, almost on a daily basis. I didn't have any experience yesterday, but the day before I did. And then for the first 3 months of my ET communications, it was sometimes all day long, night and day. I was having interdimensional experiences, and I came very close to losing my sanity. And that's because I'm a third dimensional being. And so no amount of me telling anybody, if I were to sit down with Avi Loeb, assuming he's open to it, or Michio Kaku, or anybody else, if I were to sit down with them and I were to start talking about interdimensional interactions, if they haven't experienced it, it's going to be very unlikely they're going to believe me. I wouldn't have believed me. And what's coming is a change to our world that is beyond our understanding, beyond our capability of believing. So my first recommendation is that you guys do the meditations. At the very least, Google CE5 protocols, or you can do my interdimensional meditations, which I teach for free on the channel. There's guided interdimensional meditations. There's some more advanced ones here in the thunderwizard.com lightning qigong, which I think everybody should be subscribed. If you're watching my channel, there are people that leave, it just drives me crazy. People will leave comments and they'll say how much I love my channel, but what did you mean by that? And it's like, you love my channel? Why aren't you subscribed? You love my channel? Why aren't you reading the books? I can tell if you haven't read any of the books. I can tell if you haven't subscribed. I can tell. What do you mean you love the channel? You can like it. You don't have to love me or love my channel. I won't get my feelings hurt. But you don't have to kiss my rear end either. I don't need that. If you truly loved the channel, you would want to be consuming as much of the information and the resources as you could. If you're not doing that, then you don't love the channel. You might like it, you might find it interesting, but it's not so amazing to you that you're going to stop buying your bag of weed for that month and instead subscribe to the 90-day challenge. When that happens, then you can say you love my channel. The way you show me you love my channel is by doing the work, subscribing, buying the books, educating yourself. This stuff, I don't know how many other people on YouTube are talking about the stuff I'm talking about. You're not going to find it anywhere else. Part of the reason is people can't comprehend it. Part of the reason is people aren't ready for it. I wasn't ready for it. I was thrust into it, and I'm grateful that my higher dimensional guides were ruthless with me, because they took me literally to the edge of my ability to stay sane and tolerate it. So much so that my body broke down. My body just stopped working. I had such incredible physical pain because I was struggling with something that wasn't part of my understanding. And until we really accept that this change that's coming is so beyond our understanding, then we're not going to get it. We're not going to understand it. One of the things that happens to me is that when I'm interacting on a higher dimensional level and I'm communicating with higher dimensional beings, or my interdimensional meditations are expanding me in ways that go beyond the third dimension, then I have this interesting experience of, on the one hand, disbelief. How do I integrate this information? Is this real? And at the same time, physically feeling and knowing that it is. But then when the interdimensional activity slows down or stops, and sometimes it'll stop for a couple of days, then this strange thing happens to me where I go back into my third dimensional hypnosis and I go, what was that? That can't be possible. I try to think about some of the things that I've thought and I've said, and I'm like, I can't, but that's just... So I know how challenging the third dimension is. It is a hypnotic state. And when you're only in the third dimension, it's impossible to understand higher dimensional interactions. So, you guys, don't just listen to me, please. Look, let me just give you an idea of why I'm a good teacher. If I were a cult leaders don't tell you to find out for yourself what they're saying. What happens when you go to church and you tell the pastor that you don't understand or you don't believe in Jesus? They're not going to tell you, well, go prove it. Go and research the historicity of the Jesus myth. Go do everything you can to prove to yourself whether or not they're not going to say that. They're going to say you just have to have faith. And you're a good person if you just believe without seeing. They gaslight you. There's no shortage of teachers out there who give you whatever it is you think you want to hear. That's why they have millions of subscribers. I don't say that. I don't tell you to just take anything I say at face value. When people want to argue with me about whether or not reptilians exist or not, and they want to, that's what one guy did today. He wanted to say there's so much evidence on the internet. And I'm like, oh my God. I have personally experienced and can prove to myself through my experience what exists and what doesn't. If I don't know, I say I don't know. And why aren't all of you having that same thought? Well, if you're not thinking to yourself, I'm going to be like Mahadeva and I'm going to prove through my own experience what is true and what is not, it's because you're a normal third dimensional human and it's frightening. I get it. But there's no way out of this. There's no shortage of people that try to get into some kind of connection with me where they want me to be the cult leader guru, and they're going to bow down and be my little followers. And I don't let them do that because it doesn't help you. But it's what you want. I'm not here to give you what you want. I'm here to tell you the truth that I've proven to myself, and instead of just taking what I say and believing or disbelieving or agreeing or disagreeing. I mean, those kind of comments are ridiculous. I agree with most of what you say. I don't give a crap if you agree with me. I'm only interested in you personally experiencing things. Everything that I offer to this channel, the 90-day challenge, is not you listening to me talk. It's about doing practices that I guarantee you, if you do them, something will change. All of the courses here, courses.thunderwizard.com, are things that you can do to prove to yourself. So don't be lazy with your own awareness. I'm passionate about it because if I'm right, and I don't know if I am, I think I am. I think my experience and the evidence and everything I've been told is pretty clear. This third dimension is going away. It's going to disappear. There's going to be a lower version of it. You don't want to go there. There's going to be a higher version of it. You do want to go there. But this one that we're on is going to stop existing. So there's no time left to placate people's fear or, laziness or ignorance. There's no time for me to try and persuade you to like me and believe in me. There's no more time for that. If what I think is coming, I would be very upset with myself if I didn't give you everything that you could to find out for yourself, because ultimately nobody else is going to take you to the third dimension. Unlike Jesus, who supposedly died for you and then will give you salvation because of what he did, nobody's going to take you to the third dimension. You have to go there yourself. And if you're not willing to take that journey, it won't happen. If you're not willing to do the work to experience it, it won't happen. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to, it's not about doing it perfectly or not. It's just about doing it. Just do it. All right. So what Avi Loeb was saying, sorry about that. What Avi Loeb was saying was that it's irrelevant to be talking about higher dimensions because we can't prove it. Well, I can tell you from personal experience that not only do higher dimensions exist, not only do they exist, but it is far beyond anything you can imagine in this dimension. So in the third dimension, we're actually interacting with the fourth, because the fourth dimension is time. So we're really 3D space-time. The fourth dimension is flowing through us in the third dimension. So that's why people ask, why don't you talk about the fourth dimension? Because the fourth dimension is already something we interact with. It's called time. The fifth dimension, if you're going to jump from this dimension to the next one, it's going to be the fifth dimension. But we can't understand the fifth dimension. We can experience it. But what will happen when you experience it is you won't really understand what's happening. You'll feel it. You'll probably feel a lot of intense energy that might be frightening. You might feel like you're coming apart. You might feel like you're blissing out, because the other thing that happens is experiencing a higher dimension is you're being filled with life force energy that doesn't fit into 3D. And so when you're not fighting it, then it becomes orgasmically blissful. And what is an orgasm? It's an explosion of bliss through your nervous system. Imagine that happening on a spiritual level. That's what happens when you allow yourself to go to the fifth dimension. It's an orgasmic, explosive bliss, and you feel like it's killing you. That's why they call an orgasm the little death, because the first time you have it, you think something bad's happening. You think you're going to die. You've never experienced such an intense sensory overload. Same thing with higher dimensional experiences. So not only does the physical sensation have this enormously explosive, overwhelming experience, but what science can never understand, because the third dimension itself is just a shadow. We live in a shadow world. What science will never understand is that in higher dimensions, emotions are also expanded far beyond what we can understand. One of the things that makes it extremely challenging to believe the communications you get from higher dimensional beings is that they will send such incredible, intense, concentrated love your way, if you're open to it. Some people don't experience it at first. So a lot of people, if you're doing CE5 and you say nothing happens, it's because you're not able to allow yourself to expand into the unbelievable amount of love that comes to you. It's embarrassing. The first few times I did it, and I experienced it, it was like embarrassing afterwards. Like I felt I felt so vulnerable. I felt so naked. Because to even come close to that with another human being only happens when you're madly crazy in love with somebody, making love to them, and you go deep into, that's the only time it even comes close, and it's beyond that. So the first few times it was like embarrassing to think about that. I had such incredible feelings of love. They weren't sexual, but they were so intense. They were frightening and vulnerable and embarrassing. Well, that's just because I don't live in the fifth dimension. When two human beings in the third dimension who they're friends and they get along, and say, hey, it's good to see you, and they give each other a hug, that level of love which we can tolerate, what we consider to just be normal, once you get into the fifth dimension, it is so unbelievably encompassing and powerful. Because who you are expands into something you can't comprehend either. So, before I continue to go off on another tangent, let me get back to the video that I've put a link to in here, which is Flatland. I've given you 2 links. And they're both from Carl Sagan. The second one is a little longer. The first one is an illustration with him saying the same thing. The second one is the same video but longer. And what he says is that imagine a 2-dimensional world. It's just flat, just completely flat. There's only 2 dimensions. Things either go this way or this way. There's no up and down. So there's only 2 dimensions, right? Length and width. So you imagine beings that live in that. So they don't know of up or down. They only know of forward and backward, right and left. That's it. They don't know anything else. And from their perspective, if they were to build a house would simply be to put a line around you. Once you did that, you'd be completely, totally encased from anything else in the second dimension. And so it would be impossible. Let's say, imagine you have soundproof walls. It would be impossible for anybody else in the second dimension to see you or hear you, or for you to see or hear them. Imagine you're in that. Well, that's what it's like for us in the third dimension. We have 2 dimensions, but we also have up and down. So we create a cube. Our house is a big cube. And if we have soundproof walls in the cube, nothing can get in, nothing can get out. We can't see anything. Nothing can see us. We can't hear anything. Nothing can hear us. So if we start to have communications with something, we realize either something is happening beyond our comprehension, or we think we're losing our mind. And he describes how, as a third dimensional being, if you were to have the ability to communicate verbally to a second dimensional being, he says that the second dimensional being safely tucked away in his house would hear your greeting, hello, second dimensional being, and would not see anybody. But he says, but even more than that, the greeting would come from inside of him. And this would make him think he was losing his mind. Nobody explained to me. When I watched all the CE5 videos and movies, nobody explained to me what would happen when you actually communicated with these higher dimensional ETs. I wish somebody had, but they didn't. I don't know why they didn't, but they didn't. And the first thing that happened was that there was a thoughts that keep popping into my head, that only afterwards I started thinking, I don't think those were my thoughts. I think that was coming from somewhere else. But then what happened is, after I made that initial connection, there was an unseen being there that had a finger on my crown chakra, and all kinds of other stuff happened. Clearly that was somebody, initiating me and opening up my chakras, my kundalini, my nervous system, and my energy to connect to something beyond what I understand. Because After that first successful interaction, which you see on the video, me flipping out and being scared because something I don't understand is happening. Nothing bad happened. It was actually a very peaceful, wonderful experience, but I couldn't understand it, so I got scared. I'm trying to tell you that because you don't have to be scared. It's okay if you are. It's only normal to be frightened about something you don't understand. But after that first interaction, then every interaction after that, beings would show up that I couldn't physically see. Sometimes I could feel something. Sometimes they do things like, turn the lights on and off, or they would take my ham radio and do things to my ham radio that were impossible. And I knew something paranormal was happening. But outside of that, what was going on is that I would get bombarded with this incredibly blissful energy that was nothing like anything I'd ever experienced in the third dimension. And I'm talking about, I've done energy work, Qigong, I've done all kinds of stuff that some of it might have felt a little bit like that, but there was nothing that I'd ever experienced in all of my energy practices or meditations that came close to the concentrated power of this energy, which was incredibly blissful. And along with these waves of blissful energy, there would be these messages that would erupt from sometimes within my heart center, within my brain. If it was in my brain, there were these thoughts that would erupt within my brain in my own voice. And it felt like I was thinking these things I had never thought. And they were directed at me. And they would be in the voice of we. It's always we. So that's one of the ways you're talking to a higher dimensional being as opposed to a ghost or a demon. Because a ghost or a demon might say I. But ETs always, with me anyway, say we. Even if it's one person. Because in higher dimensions, you're connected to all other conscious beings. So I would get these messages, we, and then the first ones were, we love you more than you can possibly imagine. You're our favorite person. You're the best person to interact with. We love you so much. You're so smart. You're so this. I mean, just overwhelming the amount of compliments and this incredibly blissful, powerful, loving energy coming into me. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And then they start telling me who I am in higher dimensions, which I'm not ready to share publicly because I don't think it serves any purpose. But trust me when I tell you, when they start talking to me about Mahadeva, you are, and they start telling me who I am, it is so absolutely grandiose. There's no way that can be true in the third dimension. It's not. And so I had that experience that Dr. Sagan talks about. I'm assuming he was a PhD. What Carl Sagan talked about was that this communication erupts from inside of me. And I can't see who it is. I can't hear them, but these messages are coming, exploding from inside of me. And I feel like I'm going out of my mind. Because the energy, bear in mind, it's coming from a fifth dimension, at least. And so when it comes into the third dimension, just even the intention of saying hello, just the word hello from a higher dimension, when it comes into the third dimension, it doesn't fit here. So just hello is going to be, it's going to have an energy to it that is beyond your comprehension. It's going to start to destroy your third dimensional boundaries. You will think somebody saying hello is the most frightening thing you've ever experienced. Or if it's so blissful and you start to go into this state of bliss, you start to think you're losing your mind. You start to think you're going bonkers. And I was so grateful because after I'd had these experiences, I was trying to figure out what's it like to communicate with higher dimensional beings. Has any scientist ever talked about this? And I was really grateful to find that video from Carl Sagan from back in the 70s, who said very clearly that when you, as a third dimensional being, try to talk to a two-dimensional being, and you just say hello, two-dimensional being, that being hears the greeting from inside of him and thinks he's going insane. And I went, oh my God, we're talking about quantum physics. The things that theoretical physicists are presuming might be the case based on their mathematical equations. It's not only true, but it's not just true that it's going to be stranger than we understand spatially, but emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, energetically. It's absolutely unbelievable. It's beyond our comprehension. So of course, if you haven't experienced it and you're a scientist who only deals with what you can prove, rightly so, in the third dimension, you start talking about this, you can't even begin discussing it because there's no proof. You have no way of building an assumption. So here's what I can tell you is absolutely the case. In higher dimensions, the love is beyond what you can imagine. And again, this is why you know, if any of you believe in evil, higher dimensional beings, false beings of light, evil, draconian reptilians, if you believe in the Anunnaki, it means you have not experienced higher dimensional anything. There's nothing wrong with that. You're only going off what you understand. The third dimension, things are bad. People are bad. People are selfish. There can be extremely destructive, I mean, to the nth degree. You know, I was just recently looking at what happened during the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, you know, and just the absolute horror and the atrocities that human beings can do to other human beings is unbelievable. So there's nothing wrong with you if you fear that higher dimensional beings, if they have more power, they're going to use that power to hurt you and abuse you and destroy you. That's only human. It's only third dimension to understand that. But just like those scientists who can't understand or even begin to entertain the idea of something they can't physically prove in the third dimension, you are refusing to accept a reality that you've never experienced. Once you've been there, once you've experienced it, you know. This is why, you know that higher dimensional extraterrestrials are absolutely, fundamentally incapable of harming you. They are incapable of even thinking any harmful thoughts towards you. It's not just that they're so righteous that they don't do it and they just choose not to. You know, the nonsense of there's good and bad aliens, that is a lie. That's a lie that's being given to you by the people who want to control you. They want you to be afraid of what you don't understand. It's a lie. It's just simply impossible from that perspective. Once you feel those emotions, once you've been there, you don't need any convincing. It doesn't matter how many people have taken Zecharia Sitchin. Everybody listening to me who believes in evil, draconian, reptilian beings, I want you to go and research Zecharia Sitchin. Let me write his name down for you. If you really say you want to know the truth and you're not just wanting to be frightened and, masturbate with your fear, I think this is how you spell his last name. Go research this guy, Zecharia Sitchin, because everything that is written about Anunnakis and reptilians and Anunnaki beings coming to Earth and creating human beings as slaves and feeding off of their energy came from him. And this guy was a science fiction writer. And he was a self-declared expert in Sumerian language, which he wasn't. And he mistranslated. I think he did it on purpose. He consciously mistranslated the mythology of the ancient Sumerians. And the ancient Sumerians, you know, the ancient Greeks called the gods Zeus and Apollo. The Norse called the gods the Aesir. The Vedics called the gods the Devas. The name for the gods in Sumerian, and it just means masculine and feminine. It means god and goddess. And all of the Anunnakis, Enki and Enlil, those are the mythological gods. And everything you've been told about the Anunnakis coming from a star in a spaceship and creating humans was either made up or misconstrued, starting with this guy. And if you are so into the Anunnaki and you take pride in believing it and you don't know this, then you truly don't want to know the truth. You're addicted to fear. It's frustrating to me when people come on here and they want to argue with me. I never talk about anything I've never personally experienced. I certainly would not create a belief in something that intense like some kind of interspatial, interstellar beings coming to Earth and creating humans simply because I read it on the internet or I saw a movie about it. I certainly wouldn't put my belief in it. I would have to find out for sure. I know that demons exist because I used to be an exorcist and I've seen demons take over people's bodies. I know that energy exists where you can do all kinds of things that you've seen in the Kung Fu movies because I've experienced it. I've either experienced it or done it myself. I know that higher dimensional beings who come from other star systems are incapable of anything negative towards you because I've experienced them, both in the third dimension and in higher dimensions. You don't have to believe me. I don't want you to believe me. I want you to go figure it out for yourself. I want you to go do it. Don't take anybody's word for anything. Go prove it for yourself. And don't be afraid. I mean, you can have fear, but listen, when you go watch the video, I'm so glad that video is up. It's embarrassing to me. I won't lie to you. It's embarrassing. But I've never let that stop me before. I've never not shown my dirty laundry to the world. I've never gotten rid of any videos that put me in a bad light. And the reason I don't get rid of videos that put me in a bad light or videos where I'm not in my highest awareness and I'm acting, in ways that are embarrassing and destructive is because I want you to know that as your teacher, I'm telling you, I'm no different than you are. I'm just as screwed up and human as you. And if I can do it, you can do it. And if I can do it, you should do it. You should do it not because it's the right thing to do, but because as a human being who is flawed, fatally flawed in more ways than you can imagine, if I can achieve these things and experience these things, then you should do it also. Because you can. And you must be willing to do the thing you're most afraid of. Especially from a spiritual perspective. You must be willing to do the thing you are most afraid of. We don't have any more time. There's no time left to screw around. So when you interact with these higher dimensional beings, when they tell you, we love you, it's not going to feel the way you think it's going to feel. You think if somebody tells you I love you that you're going to just melt and go, oh, that feels great. When they tell you I love you, you're going to be overwhelmed with this blissful feeling of love. And then when you come back into your body, maybe, maybe not, but very likely you're going to fight against that. You know, I'll give you an experience I had. Bear in mind that, you know, I had given up my idea of a God a long time ago. And during one of my first interactions, these beings were teaching me how to meditate. They were teaching me how to tap into the quantum field, as I call it. And I was going to do a meditation to tap into the quantum field, and I asked the quantum field, I treated it like a conscious being. I treated it like it was God. And I said, and I wanted to tap into it. And this unbelievably blissful energy came through, and so much so that I started laughing. I couldn't stop laughing. I was just so, and so as I'm experiencing all this bliss, I'm laughing, and you'd think that, oh man, I had this great blissful experience. But once I was back in my body, I got mad. And I said, how dare you do that to me? Why are you playing with my emotions like this? Why are you trying to lie to me? I know what I thought was, I came up with this paranoid delusion that the ETs were pretending to be God and putting energy into me so I would think that God existed when God really didn't exist. I mean, does that make any sense? Of course it doesn't make any sense. That's because that experience with the quantum field was so far beyond my own, negative self-programming, as well as my experience of the third dimension, that afterwards I had to try and gaslight myself out of it. And so instead of doing that, I started being angry towards them, saying that they're lying to me, they're playing games with me. Why are you doing this to me? That happened to me 3 or 4 times. They took me places, they showed me stuff in other timelines, other dimensions, and when I came back, I accused them of lying to me. For no reason. So understand that all of your fear, all of the fact that people like Zecharia Sitchin, for example, takes this mythology that has nothing to do with reptilians or taking humans in form, and his need to turn it into something where higher dimensional beings are causing harm to humans, like psychopaths and sociopaths. It's because he couldn't tolerate expanding into anything beyond his limited 3-dimensional understanding. You have to understand that the third dimension is working so hard to keep you in the third dimension. Your programming is working so hard to keep you here that you will turn the beings that love you the most into horrible demons in your own mind. And it's only because I've spent 40 years working on myself and knowing that my brain can do this, especially when somebody shows me a lot of love. That's something my brain will do. It'll start telling me, nobody could possibly want to feel that way about me. Only because I know that about myself, that I stop and go, wait a second. Have these beings actually done anything harmful to me? No, they've actually only given me energy. They haven't taken anything. They've only given to me. And I actually looked, okay, I'm gonna examine every single moment that I've spent with them, and have they ever taken anything from me? And the answer was no. They always only gave to me. And I've come to understand that that's not necessarily from them doing anything other than just showing up. Because a higher dimensional energy coming into the third dimension is only going to give you energy. Even if they don't, transmit any energy to you, even if they're just standing there, you will be filled with their energy, because their energy is much larger than ours, just because they live in that place. So, I don't know why I'm so passionate about this today. It's just, I have to tell you, when I think about what I've experienced, what I've written about in my books, now maybe you want to go read the books instead of just wasting your time just listening to me talk on videos. Get your ass to Amazon and get the books in whatever form you can and read them, digest them. because they're more than just entertainment. I'm not here to entertain anybody. I'm frustrated because I see the majority of humans either not aware, not interested, or, interacting with this phenomenon in the ways that, most people are. And it's not their fault. I was no different. You go back and listen to videos that I made 3 years ago, you'll hear me tell you why it's physically impossible for aliens to exist. And here I am now telling you not only do aliens exist, but they are a ladder of consciousness that can take you directly to God, him or herself. That you yourself can become God if you open up to the understandings of that energy. And if you do the physical work to connect to it, which is what the thunderwizard.com is all about. The lightning qigong is all about doing that. It's exercises, energy practices that will connect you to higher dimensional energy. I didn't realize that when I was training in it. It was the most advanced energy practices in the world. I've come to find out, I've researched and correlated it with all the other things I could come across, and I've come across a lot. Nothing has come close to this, and now I know why. It's because these practices that I've synthesized come from traditions that were connecting to these same dimensions where these higher dimensional beings are coming from. And we don't have a choice anymore. We're either going to move up to the next level or we're going to drop down a level. It's the only choices we have. And the good news is that everybody can get there. You don't need Jesus to do the work for you. You get to make the choice. Every single person will be given a choice. And right now, as these higher dimensional solar waves are hitting us, we're now starting to get into the nitty-gritty of the solar wave event. Again, there's another storm that's going to be hitting soon. I could be wrong, but I'm willing to bet that these storms are going to start coming faster and they're going to be more intense. And the end result of it is that you're either going to shift up or shift down. And listen, if I'm wrong, I'll come back and tell you I'm wrong. I don't have an emotional or an ego need to be right about this. So, don't take my word for any of it. Go to the interdimensional meditation course on the channel. Do the free guided interdimensional meditations. If you need to, like me, if you need to prove what you're experiencing is real, then get yourself, put a camera, put a video camera on you when you do the meditations. Have a voice recorder, a digital voice recorder. I did that. Have a digital voice recorder, recording while you're doing the meditations, and say to these beings, because they will not interact with you if you don't give them permission. And they won't do it, and they won't because they don't want to scare you. And they know that if you experience their dimension without realizing it, you'll be frightened and you'll think something bad happened to you. So you have to get their permission. So my suggestion is that when you do these meditations and you're sending your thoughts, even if you're sitting right now, listening to me right now, send out a mental invitation and say, I need to know whether you exist. I don't care if it frightens me. I need you to do something to prove that you're real. I'm going to give you an example. There was somebody that I know who I respect a lot, who I started telling this about. And the higher dimensional beings started going to them. So much so they did stuff they haven't done with me. They showed up in the guy's house. There was behind a screen, and this light, came from behind a screen, and there was nothing there. And he knew because he had been listening to me and thinking about it. And his spouse was thinking about doing CE5, and same thing. They started showing up in their house, and they haven't followed through with that. And it's not because they're not spiritual people. I can't speak for them, but I can only imagine it's just so beyond their ability to comprehend. They're like, I just don't even want to touch that. And so they just don't. Now, they're going to be fine. They're very spiritual people and they've got very high vibrations, but they just didn't want to go there. And so, the ETs respect that. But they need you to ask them. And if you say things like, I need you to do something that I cannot explain away. I need you to prove everything that Mahadev is talking about. Otherwise, I don't want to believe it, but I want to know what's true. Then something will happen. But you got to be prepared. Something's going to happen that you're not prepared to deal with on the third dimension. So anyway, somebody's asking, how do I learn Celestial Qigong, which is, you can do Celestial Qigong or you can do Lightning Qigong. I don't know how many times do I point to this? Do you see that? Everybody listening to me, if you haven't clicked on all of the links yet, there's courses.thunderwizard.com, there's thunderwizard.com, there's I've told you michaelwilliamdenny.com. Don't ask me questions if you haven't clicked on the links. Guys, don't be lazy. I just got through saying the same kind of thing. You have to take responsibility. You have to go after it. Anyway, Celeste, I don't have Celestial Qigong link up there. So guess what? CelestialQigong.com. That is the Celestial Qigong is the base practice from which the Lightning Qigong came from. So if you want to really get the best of it, go do the Celestial Qigong and simultaneously do the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong, because the Lightning Qigong came from that. It came from other stuff too, but it came primarily from that. And if you want to know everything, go to courses.thunderwizard.com. Again, it boggles my mind. People ask me where to find stuff, and I can tell they haven't clicked on the links. Because we live in a society where people are not taught how to take responsibility for what they want and go get it. I'm grateful that I grew up in I was born in the 60s, because it wasn't until, sometime after 2000 that, the internet did everything for you. Until then, if I wanted something, I had to get on my bike, or I had to go walk somewhere, I had to drive to a physical location, or I had to pick up a phone and actually dial something, to actually get what I wanted. And people have, the internet has destroyed people's ability to go get what they want. So much so that they don't even look. I mean, people just don't even put the effort into learning how to figure stuff out and find stuff. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off the deep end here. But anyway. So, I think I've said everything I need to say. Do the work. Reach out and have your own experience. Have your own experience of what it's like. I'll end with this, because I watched again that video by Carl Sagan. Now, one of the things I've been trying to figure out is that there's a council of light beings. And I wish I knew what that meant. I can guess, they're powerful light beings who I assume have some kind of responsibility in helping, order the universe or something like that. But quite frequently I have been called in meditation to go and speak with them. And they have, a few times in the beginning, they actually came to me. At one point, my bedroom was filled with these beings, all different species, and they were some council, and it was a very intense experience, which I don't need to get into. But when I've been called to see them in their dimension, the strangest thing happens. I'll show up, and you go through these weird little wormholes, and then you show up in some strange dimension. And for some reason, they're always directly to my right. And no matter how hard I try, I can't turn to face them. No matter what I do, they're always to my right. And I was trying to figure out why that was. And then as I was listening to Carl Sagan talk about just the fourth dimension, he was saying, you know, imagine everything we got in the third dimension. We got up and down, we got right and left, backwards and forwards. Now imagine then everything turning on that to right angles. Now, and rightly he says we can't understand that. So I can only assume that when I'm in that dimension, it's got an angle to it that my third dimensional mind can't comprehend. So they're always to the right of me, no matter what I do. I can't face them. I try and face them, and it just. I think that's it. It's a dimension that has properties that don't exist in my understanding. All right. So as I've said before, I don't take questions anymore from anybody unless you are subscribed to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. And I've said the reasons why. But I also want everybody listening to me, if you're serious about what I'm teaching here, don't come on here and give me lip service. I don't care, but I don't need comments where you tell me about how much you love my channel. I mean, some people are very nice and they do that, but some people are doing that while specifically one person was wanting to argue with me while at the same time telling me how much they love my channel. And they're arguing about something that they haven't even bothered to investigate, that I've written in 2 books, that I put in innumerable amounts of videos. They haven't even bothered to find out what it is that I teach. They just need to put in a comment that they're arguing about something that I said. So if you like my channel, if you like what I'm doing here, then show the channel love by actually watching more of the videos, by reading the books, by doing the exercises that are in the playlists, doing, you know, something as simple as the Hul breath or the Huar breath every day, even if it's for a few minutes. I'm writing it down here. You can go look this one up. You can put it into Google and you'll find Hul breath. But the Huar breath, that is actually the mantra of the 5th dimension. That was given to me by an ET who sat there next to me, and I couldn't see him, but he sat there and helped shift my energy as I was chanting a sound and helped me form it in my mind and feel it in the different chakras. And I've come to find out it's the mantra for the 5th dimension. So do that stuff on a daily basis. Do the work. Don't just listen to what I say, and don't take anything I do or say personally. My only goal, the only thing I'm interested in, is to help as many people as I can get to this next place we're going to. And that's all I care about. So take advantage of the information I'm giving you. Take advantage of the tools I'm giving you. Use them. And for the love of the gods, just get over yourself, whoever you are. Who cares what you think and what I think? Who cares? Be more interested in what the truth is than what you think and what I think and what other people's opinions are. Stop caring about that. Because it's all going away. All of it. It's all going away. We don't got any more time left. Or we got a short amount of time. And again, if I'm wrong, I'll be happy to admit it. All right, so I don't see any questions from any... I don't see any questions from people who are subscribed, so we'll just leave it at that. All right, my friends, that's it. Thank you so much. I love you all, and I hope to see all of you whenever we get to this next thing. But keep your eyes peeled, because the proverbial is going to hit the fan right about now. I think everything is going to start ramping up. Okay, Cats and Me, let me just respond to this because this is very understandable. You say, I feel like the ETs don't want to interact with me and that makes me feel sad. Well, I guarantee you that you've reached out to them, I guarantee you they reached out back. I guarantee you. What you're experiencing is your third dimensional self-protection mechanism. Now, I already know, I don't know you, but I already know you've suffered trauma. I already know that you've suffered trauma from people who you loved. People you loved hurt you. I already know that. I don't know anything about you. Simply because when you do interdimensional meditation, when you do CE5, the barriers that keep you in the third dimension are going to be the first thing you experience. So what keeps you in the third dimension is your feeling that you're unlovable and nobody loves you and that you're not worthy. Go and watch my video. Again, Cats and Me, have you seen the video? How I Became an Extraterrestrial? Have you seen it? If you have, then you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, why the hell have you been on my channel so much and not seen it? In that video, you see me say, and I do it on purpose for the same reason. I do it on purpose. I'm in the experience, and I know that there's an ET just phased out of my visual sight because I can feel his energy and I can feel his finger on my crown chakra. And I say to him, I don't feel worthy of this experience. And I'm almost in tears. I don't feel worthy of this experience, and I need you to tell me that I'm worthy. And my radio went crazy. He was saying, yes, you're worthy. That feeling that you have that tells you don't feel worthy means there's an ET in your physical presence. And your body is responding with its self-defense mechanism of, I'm not worthy. So the idea is to go into those feelings and feel them. Remember where you learned that. Who taught you that? Because when you can let go of that, when you can let go of that feeling and allow yourself to mourn, because what needs to happen is you need to mourn over the fact that whoever it was, whether it was your parents or whoever, that you wanted them to love you and they didn't. And it was so devastating to you that in order to protect yourself, you created this armor that says nobody's ever going to hurt me again because I'm not worth it. So I'm not even going to expect anybody to love me because if I do, it'll hurt so bad when they reject me. That's why you can't feel them. They're there, but you won't let yourself be loved by them. So they can't get through. It's not from them, it's from you. So next time you do CE5, you say to them, like I did, you say, because of the abuse I suffered, I can't allow myself to feel loved, and yet I still want to connect with you. Please help me. I'm afraid. Please help me. I feel unworthy. Please help me. And be prepared to be completely destroyed. Completely destroyed by the love that's going to come. You know, everybody here should go and investigate the mental illness called borderline personality disorder. Because we suffer, every human on the planet suffers from, even if you're really healthy, you suffer from a little bit of borderline tendencies. So borderlines are people who, when they were infants, they were so neglected from their parents that it almost killed them. So let's be clear about this. This is a fact. This has been proven for hundreds of years that if you have an infant and you do not give it love, that infant will die from lack of love long before it dies from lack of food, shelter, and clothing. And when the most tragic case of human existence occurs, when an infant gets just enough attention that it doesn't kill them, but doesn't give them enough love for them to create an identity, they spend the rest of their lives in a state of mental illness called borderline personality disorder. And the symptoms of borderline personality disorder are that they want love and connection more than anything. And they do everything in their power to connect with people and fall in love. But the moment that the person they show interest in shows them any real love, they go crazy. And they literally become psychotic, and they start accusing the person of trying to kill them. I know, I dated one. And you've never seen anything like it, where you're literally telling somebody how much you love them and you're full of love, and then to see this look come over their eyes and they start accusing you of trying to kill them. They'll go so far as to get violent with you, to slash your tires. They might ghost you or block you. And it's incredibly destructive. It's just incredibly hurtful, because you believe in the moment that they love you and that they know you love them. And then all of a sudden they act as though you hit them over the head with a 2x4. That's because if they were to allow your love to reach them, they would regress back to the point when they were an infant and they were literally about to physically die from lack of love. And that intolerable feeling, they found a way to protect themselves from that. They regress back to that point and they throw up that armor that makes you out to be an evil person trying to kill them. And this is what happens to human beings when higher dimensional love hits you. The first thing that will happen to some people is they won't think anything's happening. They'll talk themselves out of it. They might get a thought that goes through their head and they go, that's just my head. They might get a feeling. They might get an energy that hits them and they'll go, I got gas or something. You know, I'll share this with you. You can go look on my channel for my Bigfoot experience, my Sasquatch experience. But when I was in that experience, first thing that happened is, just out of my line of sight, just beyond the trees, I heard a scream that was the loudest scream I've ever heard in my life. And from a vocal perspective, the pitch was higher than a woman screaming in terror. And it was lower than like a man screaming in anger. And it was greater and more powerful than a dinosaur screaming. And it was all happening on all these different levels. And then on top of that, there was a higher dimensional level of energy that just went right through me. And of course, it scared the crap out of me. And after the scream, which lasted about 3 seconds, my brain went into this strange thing where it started going through the list of all of the known animals in the forest. Was that a bear? Was that a mountain lion? Was that an eagle? You know, all the things that it could have been. And my brain was like, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. And when I went through all of the list, this again happened in a split second. And my brain realized that no animal on the planet could have made that sound. The weirdest thing happened. My brain said, that didn't happen. And it started to erase the memory of, you call it dissociation, but it started to erase the memory of what just happened. But before my brain could finish that, because if it had, and that Sasquatch had only screamed once, I wouldn't have remembered it. It would have been as though it never happened. I might have thought I had a dream the next day. I think I dreamed something. But just before my brain was able to gaslight me out of it and completely erase the memory, the second scream came in. Same thing happened. Lasted about 3 minutes. My brain afterwards went through the whole thing of it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. Oh my God, this isn't part of normal human reality. And my brain said, that didn't just happen. As it started to erase the memory, the third scream came in and my brain broke. And this is what is happening. Now, Sasquatch, they're their own deal. So, they're not ETs. ETs are different from Sasquatch. Sasquatch is, but ETs are incredibly sensitive to your well-being, your happiness, your safety. And the last thing they're going to do is frighten you. So the moment that you reach out to them and they begin to connect with you and you unconsciously filter them out of your fear, they're going to take that as a no thank you and they're going to leave you alone. So just because you think they're not there and because you're not good enough and all that, that's your own narcissism telling you you're having a borderline moment. You're talking yourself out of being loved. So the thing to do is know that. The second time, so the first time that I did CE5, you can see it on the video. Clearly something happened. And there was stuff that I didn't even bring. I mean, I had video of orbs flying around. I talked myself out of it and said it was people with flashlights. Looking back on it, it was impossible that that's what it was. So after the first one, I talked myself out of it and said nothing happened, even though I have video of an orb flying over me that I didn't see. I didn't see it. It was flying over me. How do I know it was real? It got captured on my camera phone, but I physically couldn't see it. And I went, but I wasn't going to stop there. I said, I'm going to keep doing this until it works. I went back a second time. And I had a communication which I talked myself out of, but in hindsight, it was real. A second communication, I said, do you guys want to come and talk to me? And they said, we can't. You're too well defended. We're going to have to bring in somebody much stronger who can break through your defenses. And then there was all this weird stuff that happened with animals, animal signs about somebody being cracked open, and I talk about that in the video. They were telling me, we're going to crack you open. You asked for it, we're going to crack you open. Then the third time is when you see me breaking down almost in tears and all that kind of stuff. It's because I couldn't tolerate the thought of being loved like that. I'm saying this because this is what the whole world's going to have to go through. And if I'm right, and I don't need to be right about this, because this isn't something I personally think is a great idea. I'm not attached to this. But I'm being more and more convinced that it's true. If the earth is if this current earth is going to disappear and it's going to split into two, a higher and a lower version, the people who flip down to the lower version are going to be the people who cannot tolerate being loved, that won't allow themselves to die to their borderline narcissism. And be very clear, the psychopaths who are doing all of the murdering and the killing and the destroying and all the elite stuff, they're psychopathic because they are desperately damaged and want love more than they can tolerate. They can't tolerate the thought of being loved because they feel like it would kill them. And it is on such an unconscious level that the only thing they know how to do is be controlling, manipulative, abusive, psychopathic, and psychotic. And those people won't make it unless every single person listening to me, no matter how damaged you are, if you say yes, I'm willing to feel the love. I'm willing to be loved no matter how painful it is. You will make it. That's the choice. The choice is I choose to be loved. It's painful. It's frightening, but I choose it. And the people who talk themselves out of it are the people who are going to shut down. All right? All right. So, Carlos, I don't know if you're a subscriber, but in the Celestial Qigong, I tell you how to close down. In the thunderwizard.com, are you subscribed to that? I tell you how to close down. So you guys, if you want to close down from the Hool Breath, you want to learn all that stuff, put some effort into learning higher dimensional stuff. But the Hool Breath itself is already a closed down routine. You don't need to do anything else. You just put your hands over your navel and breathe. But if you want to learn that, you're serious about learning these exercises I'm teaching you, come on, guys, put a little bit of effort into it. Go subscribe to the thunderwizard.com. Go to courses.thunderwizard.com and get the Celestial Qigong. I put all of the information out there. I can't make you go get it. But if you want to learn, the courses are there, the tools are there. You just got to go pick it up. Cost you $55 a month, cost you whatever it is. I mean, I know you're spending that much on something else, video games, something. I know you're spending that money on something else, so why don't you spend it on something that's valuable to you? All right, that's it. Enough of my old guy finger pointing. That's it for me, guys. I hope that this has been helpful, and yeah, there you go. I'll see you guys all next time. You know what to do. Thank you so much for showing up. I love you all. I'm meditating for all of you, and I look forward to seeing us all choose to be loved and get to that next level together. All right, that's it. See you guys next time.